Okay. Yeah. Those were the times, like very early times for communication and all those things. So you would have seen all the evolution. Yeah. Please continue your story. Like I didn't mean to
Yeah.
interrupt you.
No, no, not at all. So it was kind of interesting in terms of I think my I didn't, that batch, my cohort, I think we had the opportunity of watching the entire telecom revolution from a ringside, and in fact, many times more than ringside, we were participants and we kind of get got involved in that. So post, it was pre GSM era. It was the cellular, pre-cellular, which was the pager revolution, which was a paging
Yeah.
broadcast. If you remember that little tiny pagers that everybody
Yeah.
used to
Yeah. Yeah.
carry,
Yeah.
right? And then after that, I left. I was in the US, and then after that, I went to. I was working with a consulting in a consulting role to work with the projects team in Ministry of Telecom in Oman and Dubai, where they were actually setting up the 2G cellular network at that time. So 2G, I
Hmm.
was a part of the team that's helped set up the 2G network those days in Oman and Dubai. And one interesting anecdote I'll just quote here is that the Dubai network actually filled up. It was a tiny 2G exchange which was I think 90,000 lines and which got full in. It was a Motorola exchange with the Motorola radio with the Siemens exchange. I remember because I was part of the team that installed it, and it got full in 2.5 hours, and it came down. The network came down by evening 5 p.m. It was crazy. So, and the phones were like brick size with the very heavy phones and so on. If you remember those days. So post that, actually, I was supposed to move back to India as a part of the Motorola had a very large project on hand. I don't know if you guys are familiar. It was called the Iridium Project. Um, any idea?
No, I don't
Any?
know. Probably it was
Okay.
some code name or something like a project or something. I don't know about that Iridium.
I'll tell you. I'll tell you very quickly. I'll tell you what it was. Iridium actually is the name of an isotope, and its atomic
Okay.
number is 66. And
Mm-hmm.
then the reason the name Iridium came up was because this was a network of 66 LEOs. LEOs is low Earth
Okay.
orbit satellites. So you have
Mm-hmm.
11 orbits of 6 satellites each with backup, and 66 LEOs will cover the entire planet. So this was a competitive
Mm-hmm.
strategy to beat the cellular network, and it was Motorola's approach to cover the planet with with non-cellular communication, which would be non-terrestrial and satellite-based. And Motorola had built
Mm-hmm.
a very specialized direct-to-satellite type device, which would actually manage the communication. So signals would go from the satellite to a ground station, and by fiber from ground station to your handset through local transmitters. So that was the technology, and they had spent a bomb. That was those days. It was a $6 to $7 billion project, and of course, the whole thing eventually failed because the mass industry movement was towards cellular, with like 100 vendors building base stations, chipsets, handsets, and so on. As you know, so from 1994 onwards, cellular revolution really took off. And I'm very happy that I
Hmm.
had the opportunity of sitting there, right, as a part of that for the next 20 odd years. And India literally, hopped from the entire mile from digitally from zero. In fact, we had only, I think, 10 or 20 million wireline phones in the country. And we moved from there to 1 billion
Yeah.
smartphones over the next 20 years. And in many ways, I was fortunate to be part of that revolution. Yeah.
Yeah, we all have been actually last 20, 30 years have been all revolutionary. Like during my childhood days, my schooling days were during 80s and my
Mhm.
engineering was 91 to 95. So we didn't have landline during my school days. And after that, like in 90s, the cellular came and like we had landlines hardly for 5, 6 years, that kind of thing.
Yes,
So
exactly.
getting landline was more difficult than getting a mobile.
Yeah, thanks to all the regulation and the central, government controls, it was impossible to
Yeah.
build that. Yeah.
So you shared like how the telecom span. How has been your you worked with Motorola, you went to Dubai, And after that, like, how did you move into entrepreneurship?
Okay, so basically, I moved. I was to move back from Dubai, from Oman, Muscat to India, to join Iridium, because Iridium, as I mentioned, in India we used to have a company called VSNL, if you remember,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
was
yeah.
the overseas communications arm of DOT, and
Yeah.
that company was a government sponsored investor in Iridium, and at that time BSNL had put in 150 million
Yeah.
dollars in that setup, and therefore BSNL
Mm-hmm.
had the rights to set up a country base station in Pune. So the Iridium, the network is on the ground. You have to have a lot of ground stations and relay stations to make that satellite network work. And as a part of that,
Mm-hmm.
Iridium was to set up a ground station in Pune. And as a part of that
Mm-hmm.
team, since Motorola was the prime contractor for Iridium, and I was an ex Motorola
Mm-hmm.
guy, I had the opportunity to participate in that application. I got chosen, and I was to come to India and report. But in the meantime,
Mm-hmm.
and I was supposed to take up that job in India. In the meantime, I met with
Mm-hmm.
a few friends who are actually, playing around with the idea of building a product in India in telecom. So I came back to
Mm-hmm.
India. I worked, talked to them, and I said, I'm going to join you. And that company was called Telesoft. It was a software house building software for the next generation telecom network. And I became a part of that. And I gave up the
Mm-hmm.
Iridium opportunity, which looking back seems to be the right thing to do, because the next 5 years, from then till about 2002, we had an incredible run where a five people company became a 320 people operation for the next 5 years.
Wow.
We raised $23 million, and I was part of that team. And we became arguably one of the first software product companies in India. Not much is talked about it, but we were one of the first guys, and we actually built one of the world's uh, well-known soft switches. So if you know that transition happened, so while the telecom revolution not only happened in wireless, there was a kind of a big explosion in terms of innovation happening inside the network, and that network
Mm-hmm.
uh, transition was all software, and that software was called a soft switch, and the soft switch actually replaced the hardware monolithic circuit switch networks that were being built by companies like Lucent and Nortel and all these guys. And we were one of the first guys in the world that actually built that, and we built right here in Bangalore. And as a part of that operation, we also had to run a team in the US, and I was a part of that team going up and down. And we became a large setup. We became a 325 people team eventually, and sold that company in 2002 to an organization in the US called Zone Technologies. So that
Mm-hmm.
5 years of learning, building the team from nothing, like 4 5 people, we were sitting in my friend's kitchen, having a beer and talking about, this is how the network might change, and we were just having a laugh about it. And a few days later, we said, you know what? Why don't we actually put a plan and see how it works? And then we shared that plan with a couple of investors, and they liked the idea, and they said, why don't you guys start building it? And we started building it, and it just happened over the next 5 years. That was, I think, to me, a much bigger learning than even a Harvard MBA can teach you. I was fortunate to be a part of
Yeah.
it.
You created your own baby and made it big, and like finally hand it over to someone bigger. So that's something very nice.